Please stand for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Welcome. And I'll be here. So hopefully Mark is just going to call when he gets down. Yes. So he may be joining us, he may not. Reports, moving down to reports. Dr. Malone, is that with the superintendent's report?
Thank you, Aaron. Just to note that the MSBA conference is January 15th and 16th. The preliminary brochure came out a few days ago. It looks like some good keynote speakers. No information on the breakouts yet, but they're always very good. So hopefully we can all attend that. Please let me know this week if you cannot, so I can make the appropriate notifications. Joe and I have begun to work on the revised fiscal 15, preliminary fiscal 16 budgets, and those will be completed for the February 2nd meeting. Looking at enrollment this week and getting that process underway.
What does enrollment look like?
We're kind of in the middle of that right now. Our original projection for this year was that it was flat from last year to this year, so we're kind of in the middle of that process right now.
No early indications.
Friday, then we got an indication.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And then just a reminder that stakeholder input would begin next month. And I've included a historical view of what our participation has been versus those invited for the last few years. So planning to invite about 50 more parents. We had 14 last year, which was a good number, and I think it'd be good to increase that. Our district residents, which are adults without children, has been our most challenging group. We invited 300 last year with 11 and 11 turning out. Planning to invite 400 this year to increase that number. I'm thinking staff member participation will increase this year. And Carly is going to help us out with getting some more high school students here for the high school session. So I appreciate your help with that. That's all I have to report. Are there any questions?
2 years ago, didn't we help you with phone calls and stuff? Were you doing?
Yeah, I think that's been helpful. Just we can't call every parent, but we each take 10 or 12 names. I think that helps.
So you'll send out a list.
I will.
Okay.
And they'll follow the same format.
The same format, yes. We'll do a 5:30 stakeholder session and meeting starting at 6:30.
Thank you. Community reports. Brian, you have instruction?
I do. Yeah, I do. The construction committee met this morning, and basically, as far as the bid package 1 and 2 site work and building additions, we're just basically working through a punch list. There's been a retainage held by the district on full payment in an effort to make sure that all the items are completed. There's about 100 items left. Now that sounds a little alarming, but some of those need a little paint in this corner, very small items. And folks will be moving in. I think I saw a Bowman truck here this morning as I was leaving. So they're moving in and working through that punch list. And we should be in very good shape. I mean, obviously we're very functional and things are moving along well. Kind of a larger outstanding issue is tennis court lighting, and that's being looked at. There's some debate between the engineering firm and the contractor about the specifications whatnot. The lighting is fine at your feet, but when the wall gets too high, it's lost in the lights. I think you've heard this story before. So basically, ICS Ryan is wanting to make sure that the solution that comes forward is really a good solution. We're not going to be looking at doing this again and again. So that's out there yet, but it is being worked on and will be wrapped up. Hopefully well in advance of tennis season in the spring. As you know, the tennis courts really are high used right now. Highly used.
How do we determine how to fix that now during this
Modeling.
season?
That was Ryan's question, very good question. And what some lighting companies do is they actually model those. They have the technology to do that. And I'm very confident with the company that they're looking at right now. I have some personal experience with them, not in my own lighting in my house, but through work. And they're a very confident company. So very, very confident with that. Teaching and Learning Center, which will be used widely throughout the district, but also by us as our future home, if you will. Looks like that's about 2 to 3 weeks out. And so we may be able to hold our next board meeting in that facility. That'll be a great addition to the district. As far as deferred maintenance items or other items that need to be done, the high school entrance is a big item. That's door 11 and over that way. Some landscaping and security are some of the bigger ticket items. Some good news, not that this has been bad news at all, but we found about another 100,000 or so in the budget. Some of that was our SAC and WAC fees, which are fees that we incurred for beginning the site work and such, permitting and all that sort of thing was actually entered twice, so it was about 76,000 showed up. And then there's other costs that were somewhat estimated that actually came in lower than expected. That's always good news in a building project. So we picked up about another 28,000 there. So that's all good. And the other real big ticket item is the field house floor, which is scheduled for bids next summer for installation in the summer of 16. That's what's out there. Any questions? Good. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Any other community reports from the board? Carly?
Push the button once. Green light.
Okay, for student council, we aren't doing too much this month, but we are partnering up with NHS to do a food drive that will last until the beginning of our Christmas break, and then to celebrate the holidays, we're doing door and holiday decorating.
And I don't know if Carly's mentioned this before yet either, but I was talking to Missy Olson today, the NHS advisor, and we are hosting the Minnesota statewide student council and NHS conference. Maybe you don't want to know that yet, but it's a Minnesota conference this year. It's in the spring, and she expected 300 to 400 students from across the state. It's a Saturday, Sunday, into Monday morning event that Becker's going to be hosting this year. A lot of students would be, I think they're working with the Holiday Inn in St. Cloud for accommodations and whatnot, but it's kind of a big deal for Becker. It's going to be a lot of work for NHS and Student Council in the spring here coming up. There's a lot of planning to do, so it'll be exciting.
Good. So no dance or anything before?
We're planning on doing a snow week dance, but that won't be until February.
Thank you, Carly. All right, moving on to item number 3, consent agenda.
Well, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor to accept the consent agenda as listed, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Number 4, Joe, this is you.
All right, turn on the projector here. Put it up. All right, so this is the truth and taxation session for taxes payable in 2015. The law says that there's really 2 requirements, and as far as setting our tax levy goes. One is that counties send out the proposed property tax statements, which property taxpayers should have received in the mail in the last couple of weeks. Spells out your taxes payable for the next calendar year from the various authorities, city, county, school, other taxing authorities. And then most taxing jurisdictions like ourselves must hold a hearing prior to certifying final levy. And so this constitutes the district's annual required hearing. So at the end of this, well, let's get on to the next one. But we've got to present information on the current year and prior year budget, and then on the proposed tax levy, and then I will allow for public comments from taxpayers at the conclusion. For our 13-14 general fund results, I know the board's kind of been hit hard to finance in the last couple of board meetings with the audit presentation last month, but our total general fund came in at about $107,000 deficit for the year, and basically that entire deficit was a spend down in the health and safety fund balance. The other fund balances overall were about $1,000 for the good, if you will, for the year. You'll see in a couple slides where that health and safety fund balance is going to catch up with the current levy that we're asking to approve this year. That was the general fund. The rest of the funds, basically the food service fund is spent in a deficit, community service fund had a net increase, and then building construction and debt service funds basically have expenses and revenues that are just kind of specific purpose. Building construction is specifically for the bonds that we issued, and the debt service fund is specifically the principal and interest on our outstanding bonds. Our 14-15 general fund budget was approved this past spring and will be amended this upcoming spring when we've got more information. At the time when we settled the budget, at that time, a lot of our contracts weren't settled, including our VBA contracts, so that's kind of a big factor in the 14-15 budget. The state did also approve a little bit of additional revenue on a per pupil basis after our budget was set, so that will be reflected in the revision that's shown this upcoming winter, spring. But for 14-15, we currently have a positive variance of $118,000 projected. In the food service fund, we've got another planned spend down for this year. We've got some capital purchasing that is required, or that basically we need to update to get our operations kind of up and running efficiently. Projecting a positive variance in community service fund again, and then basically our building construction debt service funds are pretty predictable. Our general fund revenues, and this is 14 and 15 both, the 14-15 years obviously budgeted, and 13-14 is from our audit. Our local property taxes for this year, which were the property taxes that were certified a year ago, is about 14% of our revenue. And our state sources are about 82%. And then federal is about 1%, and other is basically everything else. User fees, interest, you name it. Our general fund expenses by program, pretty even from one year to the next. Our instruction includes regular, special, vocational instruction, and also extracurricular activities. And 67%, 2/3 of our general fund is where we've been pretty consistently with that. Student services such as transportation, staff development, mental health, and social work services make up about 15%. And then the other 11% are made up of mostly maintenance, utilities, maintenance staff, and everything that goes along with that. said a couple slides ago, about 82% of our revenue is state sources, and a lot of that is driven by the basic formula allowance. And what that is basically our students times the formula allowance is that gen ed revenue. The formula allowance has increased the past couple of years, and was flat for a while, and it's still really not keeping up with inflation, but we've seen 1.5% increases the last couple of years. We're up to about $5,407 per pupil for fiscal 15. Our October 1 enrollment, Ryan asked about enrollment earlier, our October 1 enrollment was 2820 in fiscal 14, about 2815 in fiscal 15, so very close. We kind of look on a grade-wide basis. We go all the way down the line. Steve's talking about end-of-the-year enrollment, which is what we're kind of funded on as our total enrollment for the year. Really depends grade by grade, because we retain some grades better than others throughout the year. For instance, our junior and senior classes end up putting in a lot of PSEO hours. So our head count on October 1st isn't always reflected at the end of the year. So we really have to take a close eye on those. We've got some projection models we use to kind of determine what we think our enrollment that's going to determine revenue is going to be. As far as our levy amount is concerned, the legislature sets the formulas that are used to determine the individual levy limits. The Department of Ed calculates the actual dollar amount limits for each district based on those formulas, and it's about a 35-page document they put out in September. The board adopts the proposed levy in September, and everything, that's our maximum levy unless the voters approve something else along the way. This slide is almost obsolete, but it goes back all the way back to 2001, the last time we were above the formula, if you will, above the gen ed formula on our levy. So back then, our levy made up, closer to 80 to 90% of our revenue, whereas now our state aid does. So it kind of shows the clip from 2001 to 2003, and it's pretty stable since then. So the proposed levy for 2015 in total is an 8.46% increase over last year. Ours took a dip down last year, and so over a 2-year period, it's a 1.16% decrease since the pay 2013 levy. And I'm going to explain some differences by fund. The general fund is seeing a $553,000 increase. Our operating referendum levies are decreasing by over $500,000. This is purely because of legislative changes. They're offset by increases in equity and what they call local optional revenues, and also somewhat, and so basically, the state is taking our operating referendum, which started out at about $790 coming into this year, and then the first $424 per student is being called local optional revenue. So when you look at your property tax statements, there are 2 lines in the school. The first one says voter approved levy, and the next one says other local levies. And this just moves it from voter approved to other local levy. Now our voters approved it, in our case in 2009, but because of the way that the legislature told us to recognize these levies, it doesn't show up that way as much on the tax statements anymore.
So Joe, with that, this levy that we passed in 2009 was it 10 years?
Yep.
Okay. So if all things stayed the same and we would run up to the expiration date of that original levy, we wouldn't even have to necessarily go to the public under this new legislation. Is that correct?
Right. The first $424 is automatic unless you choose not to levy it locally. So the state puts that on our levy, and the board has to say, no, we don't want to levy that. So that's the first $424.
Right.
The next $300 is what we call board approved. So the board would have to make a motion to approve an operating levy up to $300. So that would put us at a total of $724 per student.
Yeah.
Since we were already above that,
Right.
it has a very minimal impact on our revenue. It's really just in the way it's recognized between local and state
Right.
funding.
Right. So it again, back to that question, if the board were, if we were not to go to the public in 10 years, when this voter-approved levy expired,
Mhm.
we could, with board action, simply approve the next $300,
Correct.
and we would have a net loss of about,
About $200 per student. Because we're close to 800 now. We, that's
Yeah,
after
724.
724, we'd be at about,
$80 or so,
yeah,
a little less than that, $76. I think
Yep.
it was 66.
so about 225 per student because
Yeah.
we did.
Okay.
That explanation kind of takes care of both the equity and the local optional revenues. Health and safety is increasing by about $375,000, and that's a result of projects approved by VE. The annual OPEB levy also increased, and that's a result of sunset provision. This pays the cost of retiree health insurance. And then reemployment is another levy that's kind of paid on a reimbursement basis for the unemployment insurance we pay. All other levies in the general fund combined for about a $33,000 decrease. The community ed levy changed by about a $9,000 decrease, and it's just a formula that moves more of it to state aid instead of local levy. And then the debt service levy, our debt service levy is really set. You have to levy 105% of the debt you owe for the year, and then they take some of it off if you collected enough in the past to make some of those payments. So the county assessor determines the market value for every property, and you see that on the statements you get early in the year. The legislature sets the formulas for tax capacity, and that determines how the tax burden is spread upon all the property taxpayers. The auditor calculates that for every parcel holder, and then the county auditor divides that whole thing and lets you know what your share of it is, and that's where we get this notice from the county. So that's basically kind of how this district's levy and every other body's levy ends up on each parcel holder. If you've got questions that are district specific about our levy amounts, you can contact me. It's best to email me with your specific question or give me a call. And questions regarding your property value should be directed to the Sherburne County Assessor's Office. They take care of all the property values in the county. Any questions? Any public questions about their property tax levy calculations? All right, that's all I got.
Alrighty. Thank you so much. Approve the truth in taxation.
2015 levy and the amount of $7,584,281.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion to approve truth in taxation. Information presented by Joe. Any discussion?
We're actually approving the levy.
Yeah. Mark, can you hear me? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Number 5, appoint employer meet confer representative. This is one that kind of had an ongoing discussion with Eric Austin as far as a meet and confer, wanting some board representation at meet and confers. So we came to the agreement that for the 10th, the December 10th meeting, we will put 2 board members there. I am unable to be there. So is anybody interested in actually going to a meet and confer December 10th?
Be out of town.
You'll be out of town.
I could.
So Brian's interested. Mark or Jason?
Yep, I can.
Mark?
It's Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
3:30, yes.
All right, so Brian and Mark can make that meet and confer next week?
Yes.
So, already. And then Dr. Malone?
Aaron, I would recommend that you make appointment for subsequent meetings.
Okay. In the past, have we made the appointment? Or has it just been assumed?
In the past, it's been the superintendent.
Okay.
If you're making an appointment now, I think you should make an appointment for future meetings.
Yeah. So, and I will, at this moment, make an appointment to Dr. Malone, will be the school board representative for Meet Confer. I've talked to two other superintendents, and that's kind of how these things typically work, is the superintendent is the school board's face and voice. So do you have two more this year?
Yes, there's 3 each year.
For each year, so, all right. So I will appoint Dr. Malone as our representative. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes, Mark?
I just said yes.
Oh, all right.
Just a question, and I didn't read I don't know if the statute speaks to this, but is there a specific number of meetings that need to be held over the course of the year? Is it 3?
It's 4 in a calendar year. Schools typically don't meet in the summer.
Okay,
So that's generally interpreted as 3 during the school year.
okay. All right. And I appreciated, by the way, the background, the specifics around, what the intent of the confer is, and that's very helpful. Just, my previous service on the board, we did have meet and confer, and it was the whole board at those meetings, and they weren't real frequent, but I know we did meet together at times, and I didn't really understand what was for necessarily, because much of the topics that were discussed were really related to the administration. But it was good to hear, and certainly not opposed to doing this at all. It would be very beneficial.
Well, I think it's very beneficial, but I also think it's, if you need to contact a board member or want to let the board know something is happening, or, we're all public employees, so we all have phone numbers on the website, email addresses, things like that, so.
Sure.
That's one of the things that ongoing conversations this year with different BEA members, as far as just the difference of understanding of what Meet Confer is and who's runs it, who's there. So, but I do think, it definitely doesn't hurt to have a board member here or there. So
I think it'll be
we'll
good.
see next week. After the 10th next week.
So just for clarity, we're appointing Dr. Malone as our representative for every meeting. And we will try to support where possible.
Dr. Malone will be the school board's appointed representative for our Meet Confer meetings, yes.
But for me, the 10th, Mark and I will be there.
Yes.
I think appointing the superintendent as the employer rep is consistent with the policy governance model.
I agree, and it's been consistent with the school districts I've talked to.
Yeah.
So
Well, your stock rep is going to be with it.
that's how they do it. That's one of the superintendents I talked to.
All right.
So,
Are these meetings recorded, video recorded, or just?
No.
Is everybody happy with the Meet Confer issue?
Yes.
Moving on to number 6, resolution fulfilling the school board vacancy by appointment. This is kind of open for discussion as far as where we want to go with this tonight. We have a vacancy, and we called for candidates, had filed by the 24th. 3 filed, which I believe Dr. Malone sent to everybody. We had a chance to look through those 3 candidates, information that they provided. so now we get to decide how we want to move forward from here. Do we want to take tonight and have discussion and make a decision on who we'd like to appoint? Do we want to, as a group, decide, maybe we want to look into this further? I don't know how, the four of you want to go about this. I don't know if there really is a,
It's at the discretion of the board.
so.
Okay, do we have a deadline by which we need to fill this position?
No, you're supposed to keep the process moving, but there's
Okay.
not a specific deadline.
Okay. Okay, we know this, well, I know two of the candidates personally. Well, obviously we all know one, Phil Bogart, who had served before, chose not to run for re-election when his term expired.
He went as a write-in.
Yeah, he did.
He
That's
did.
true. At the last meeting,
Yes, he
thought,
did.
okay, I was,
So he was interested.
yeah, he certainly was. In my opinion, was served very well, has good experience. I would find this hard pressed to find a more qualified candidate, and certainly not taking anything away from the other two gentlemen that applied. I guess I would just ask, the question that comes to mind is, we just had a school board election. If they were really interested, of course, Phil didn't run either, but maybe he didn't want to run against us, I don't know. But there's, two people there that had not, at least prior to this, expressed an interest so publicly. It's great that they're interested now, and that's certainly a good thing. But, having the experience that Phil has and the manner in which he served, I would not be reluctant at all for us to entertain the idea of nominating him for that vacancy.
That was well put, Brian.
What's that?
That was well put.
Okay.
It's a sensitive
Are either
topic.
one of them present?
What's that?
No.
Are either one of them present tonight?
Nobody,
No.
none.
None.
I was of a similar opinion. All three resumes were quality individuals. I also know two of the three, but I also know that Phil served with distinction. He's qualified and experienced in the position, which removes some hurdles for us.
Definitely gets it
Having
right.
somebody that knows the rules, knows the people, so I would also entertain frankly, I don't see a need to do interviews based on knowing people. I have the same sentiment you do, quality people. I appreciate everyone that applied, but Phil just has the experience and background with this board that makes this an easier transition for us.
I think, reading through these, I think all three of the gentlemen have some great background, and I think any one of them would fill our position. And would be a great addition to the board. Different voices, different ideas. The one thing that I keep coming back to is the fact of the board training. When we came on board, we had trainings before we walked into the school board. And that's kind of where I get stuck, is I know Phil has it.
That's kind of what I was
I think you have to look at how long this term is to fill. I mean, it's 2 years.
2 years.
And so to try and get up to speed with some training is.
Well, I don't even know if training's available now, is it?
I think the phase 1 trainings have passed. Phase 2 training would be available at the MSBA conference.
I don't know. Is it not choice? Is it not, she was voted out, yeah. Board appointed, so.
Mark, what do you think?
term to fill a position with some experience is, I think it should be priority.
I thought Phil had a great relationship. Certainly conducted himself very well at the table. He understands the role of a board member. It's not to micromanage. He gets that policy governance model, understands that very well. And I think he had a good relationship with key stakeholders in the district as well. So I guess I'd like to make a motion then that we fill our vacancy with Phil Norder.
I'll
I would
second.
second.
In 2 seconds.
You got that? Lori? So we have a motion by Brian to fill the position with Phil Norgard, seconded by Lori. Any discussions? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. So Phil Norgard will be the newly appointed. Do you want to call him Dr. Malone and let him know, or?
Again, I'll want to meet with him and bring him up to speed on board issues. If you'd like to call him first, and just tell me what you prefer.
I'll call him.
Okay?
At least tell him what happened. Call him and let him know that he was the choice, and
Assume we'll call all three.
we'll, of course, we'll call him.
Extend it, thank you to the council to play.
Yeah.
And I'd encourage him to run.
Yeah, absolutely.
We should. I mean, it's great to have that choice. Last time we didn't have much choice. It was through this.
Do I need to sign that resolution? Just,
No.
okay.
So, and I agree, Brian, I think, unfortunately, the vacancy came at a bad time. So, if it was vacant related,
Yeah.
the application, maybe they fight. So, but yeah, I'm pleased that we had,
Interest.
three interested individuals.
Yeah.
So that we weren't scraping or looking for people that actually step forward to it, so. And I thank those three gentlemen for doing that. Moving on to item number 7, policy 223, strategic goals.
So the first reading was last month, and as you know, the goals would center around 3 primary areas. First one would be academic achievement, focusing on NWA reading and math for 1st and 2nd grade, MCA proficiency for grades 3 through 8, 10, and 11. And we decided that we would look at the spring preliminary scores before setting an actual growth target for 15-16. The second area would be creative thinking and critical thinking. Creativity and critical thinking. And likewise, we decided we would wait until this spring and take a look at the clarity survey data. We just finished the testing for this fall. We'll do another round of testing this spring. We'll look at what that growth looks like, and I think that should inform the board to be able to make a target for 15-16 in those 2 areas. And then the third area is that the board would develop a long-term funding strategy no later than May of 15. And the May of 15 is in the event that this evolves into a referendum. We would need to know by that point not only for the legal resolutions, but also to conduct the informational campaign.
Just a question. 2 of the goals certainly, they're around student achievement and interaction or focus areas of learning, critical thinking, and creativity. How are these goals? How are they communicated to the teachers, to the administration, that sort of thing? And do we allow? What sort of feedback do we get through that process? This isn't the first time we've had goals similar to this, and just like to know what kind of feedback loops we have.
Well, of course, the staff are a critical stakeholder group.
Right.
It's important to get their feedback. So as they're one of the 4 stakeholder groups that we hear from during the policy governance. I think they're February or April, I can't remember. But that's really the opportunity for all of our stakeholder groups to give their
Okay.
input. So when they're face to face with the board and talk about strategic goals and planning, that's the opportunity.
Okay. Thank you. I move approval.
I'll say.
Policy 223.
Okay, so I heard the motion in a second. I just wanted to kind of speak to the policy. I mean, obviously, we talked about last time, potentially inserting a goal towards, activities and use of facilities and that kind of stuff. I'm certainly willing to give that, not move forward with that this year. It's too complicated. It's too, I went through all of the stakeholder input, and there's a couple of things I can draw from, but I think that we're kind of a little bit farther down the line than to try to add something new. What I would like to say is, as we move through this process next year, I would really like to see the board much more involved in collating and looking directly at the input. Because what I found in looking back through the kind of combined input is that there appears to be quite a bit of filtering in there. And I want to make sure that we as the board are seeing more of that raw information.
Could I, Mark, do you mind if I speak to that?
Yeah.
You do mind?
Go ahead.
Okay. Really, that's our job, to filter it, is the way I saw it. We were the ones that, we gathered that information. Angel took our notes, and then we had opportunity to look at that, and from that data, from that information, we were to come up with recommendations. And these were just a few of the recommendations that, I think there were like 4 put forth that night, if I remember correctly. So that is up to us, and we can have as much input as we want, I believe. So I'm not sure what you're asking for, really.
Well, I mean, I think all the notes were taken, but I think there was some combination and summary done of those notes that were then put together into the input that was received. I think it was in the October board packet that I found it.
Okay. Well, we'll be starting this process very
I
soon
was gonna
again.
say,
So.
something we can just be on guard for this next
Yeah, I think so.
round. I
Yeah.
don't think we need to
Absolutely.
solve any problem here tonight.
I would just add the process that we used. The first time that the board saw the raw data, the task before us was to review that data and be sure that nothing was omitted. And then the next time it was put into categories by the 4 stakeholder areas. And again, the task for the board was to review, not only was it under the right stakeholder area, but was anything omitted. And then, of course, the final time is when we had each piece of input, and we put it on the board and aligned it with the different exit outcome areas. So I'm certainly open to spending more time with that, Mark, but I do believe the board saw all the data.
Yep. We'll have to look harder at it.
So, any further discussion on policy 223? Okay, the question before us is, the motion before us is to accept, adopt policy 223, strategic goals. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. And before we adjourn, do I need to, I see there's some things here that need the clerk's signature. Do I need to appoint an acting clerk? I'll turn in.
Mark will be back in the call.
When will you be back in town, Mark?
Saturday.
Next week, Mark? Okay,
So we can just wait?
we'll catch Mark next
Okay.
week.
All righty then. All right, that answers that question. So that brings us to adjournment. Thank you.